your flesh and blood.
Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, new paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here 9 times a week, Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will take time to subscribe and click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, be entertained and inspired. A reminder that Choices, which is my book, 5 Steps for Life, it's available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle with Audible, soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we do have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, please go to richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address. If you go to richarddugan.com, there is also a link directly to PayPal so that you can send us whatever support you can. And we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also ask that you take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. And with that, we now take you to our very special interview and guest here on Tell Me Your Story. And welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We have a returning guest here on the program, and I'm looking forward to this. It's a conversation we've had many, many times on this program. And my guest today is, once again, Greg Stewart, PhD, MDiv. And we'll find out about all those wonderful acronyms. He's got a new release here. It's called I3 for Leaders, and it's information, interpretation, and intensity. It's unleashing and this is an interesting word in here, unleashing the rage of negative emotions against the obstacles of becoming more. And Greg, thank you so much for joining us again. It's a real pleasure.
Thank you again for having me back, Richard. It's always great to be back with you.
Well, I'll tell you, I always enjoy these conversations, and this is going to be a lot of fun too, because leadership is interesting. And I heard a comment just a little while ago, especially in regards to leaders that there are some leaders that it's been said that one of the main characteristics, sorry for using that word, is character, not just qualifications.
Yeah.
Because you can have all the qualifications in the world, but you can be, how can I put this? A person who doesn't get along with anybody in the sandbox because they claim the sandbox as theirs. And we'll kind of start there in that respect in terms of what is, if there is a top of the list, a number one element for being a good leader. Is there
I would
one?
say, yeah. Well, there's several, and that's where we'll get to the subtitle here. But when it comes to leadership, I go with John Maxwell. Definitely, he's the one that quoted it as far as leadership is influence. Okay, so what are the actual components that influence one human being over another? So one of my quotes is that leaders overcome obstacles everybody else only wishes they could overcome. That's what makes them leaders. That's what gives them the ability to influence. But when it comes to leadership, you cannot impart what you do not possess. So and we recognize that we will lose if we do not have, because I have 4 components of leadership. So one is spiritual development and destiny, which has to do with those beautiful values that so many companies tout, like integrity, right? And when it comes to resilience, when it comes to different EI components. So we cannot impart what we don't possess, and we can't have influence if we cannot lead ourselves. And that's really the premise of the book, is leading yourself first. That gives you permission to be able to influence others.
Would you say that we could conceivably look at some of our leaders today who actually do have this particular characteristic? And by the way, I liked your insertion using the word spiritual aspects because that does not denote a particular philosophy, if you will, or creed. And we'll get into that as well. But what about that? Do you see leaders, maybe in corporations or in educational institutions, maybe in religious organizations, because we'll get into the spiritual thing, and government and so forth? Are you seeing that we have some of these kinds of leaders that have
Yeah,
those aspects you're talking
so
about?
there's another way of saying it, like people like leaders with referent RE, not with a F, not a V, referent power, which means that they've stood the test of time and based on their integrity. I see this as far as even like coaches within sports arena. There's leaders everywhere that what others say of them is, look, I will follow that leader to the ends of the earth.
Mm,
So there are, of course, leaders like that. So there's like, I talk about formal power and informal power. Formal power being position. Like I have this position, so I influence that way. Then there's the formal power of knowledge and expertise. And then there's the formal power of coercive and reward power. I've got power. But this type of power we're talking about, which is influence, has to do with informal, which has to do with personality, has to do with charisma, has to do with that and that referent power that this person has paid the price and they've stood the test of time. They have resilience, they have integrity, they've held their values. Those are the kind of leaders. And yeah, I see those leaders all around.
yeah.
And as examples.
Yeah. And I've seen leaders that I have disagreed with on several different areas. And yet, when I take a look at their foundation, if you will, whether I agree with it or not, I sit there and go, they stuck to their values, to their mores and so forth. Whether I agree with them politically or
Right,
economically,
right,
it doesn't matter. And I will tell you, in modern history, there's one man that I look to, and I would say I like this guy because he stuck to his gun, so to speak. And that's former Vice President Pence. He stuck to his values. Doesn't matter whether I agree. I love the fact that he did that. I wish more people would say, you know what? It doesn't matter if I get reelected or I get laid off or fired or shipped off to an island somewhere.
right.
I don't care. I'm going to do the right thing. That is seems to be lost. And maybe what I'm looking at is the wrong thing here, but it seems like it's lost in a lot of leaders because maybe because we're getting that those individuals shoved in our faces on a regular basis in the news and social media and so forth, rather than the people we're talking about here that we want to encourage people to become.
Right. And yeah, so in my book, the last chapter, I think it's the last chapter, is on the leaders, refiners, fire. That the best leaders, like Pence and those who have stuck to their values regardless of what it cost them, and the leaders, refiners, fire, like the advice I received and then implemented in my own life is when I was going through a hard time. I had a falling out with another leader, going through a very difficult time, and another leader came to me and said, "Greg, one day this will be over. The situation, the storm, whatever you want to call it. One day this will be over. When it is, you want to be able to look back and say you would not have changed a thing in how you responded.
Yeah.
Might be disagreement, there might be negative emotions. It's not about that. But in the value set and how you responded, that you wouldn't change a thing in how you responded.
Yeah.
That's holding to your values. That's kind of leaders that we desperately need nowadays.
Yeah. Have you found it in your life, in your business life as well as personal life? Have you found it challenging, or is it's not even a question? You know where you stand, and it doesn't matter what these other. No, I'm turning right here. Okay, I don't care if it's more expedient. It's going to give me more money, more prestige. I'm going to the right. So, and again, I'm not speaking politically. Just
No, no,
right,
no. It's
turning
it's
left or right.
right as in value. No, right as in value sets because
Yeah.
values slash virtues, right?
Yeah.
And those values and virtues transcend, let's say, political parties.
Hmm.
It is the value and virtue of let's say being a servant leader.
Hmm.
It's the value and virtue of temperance, of self-control, right? Those kinds of character traits, let's call them that. Those character traits, those values and those virtues transcends opinions, which I
Mm.
think what you're speaking to.
Yes.
So yeah, when I mean, of course, when I have held to those going through, they have proven true. They have proven, like, because again, I want at the end of the day, I mean, long term, it's like one of the key questions I like asking clients is, if you could ask yourself one question, if you can talk to yourself when you're on your deathbed,
Mm.
what's the one question you would want to ask yourself? Right? Because we all know that, the whole that, I mean, it's kind of morbid, but it is true
Sure.
that when we get to that point, when I do the proverbial sucking on oxygen,
Hmm.
when we look back, it's about our legacy.
Yeah. No, I want to look at my awards. Okay. I want to see all of my
Right.
awards
Right.
and all of no. Um, I will tell you that one is there's a fascinating aspect to that, especially when you start taking a look at the final words of an individual. They're sucking on the oxygen and so forth. And one of the most profound that I heard was from a gentleman who I don't want to say that I idolized him, but there was a part of me that wanted to be him. I was watching his television series in the 70s, in the early 70s, I think it was, maybe it was the late 60s. And I still have the very first album that came out of that television series. And we're talking about the Partridge Family. We're also talking about David Cassidy. Do you know what his last words were? They claim that his last words were I
What?
think it was four words. Four words. So much wasted time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Profound.
Yeah.
And I know he was speaking about himself personally, but it said a lot to me. It said a lot. And when I heard that, I thought, okay, what have I accomplished? And then I can actually go through and see the things that I've accomplished. No, they're not monumental. No, they're not international. That my name is a household word. I don't care. That's not the point.
Right.
Like with these programs, and probably with what you're doing too. And you have a series of books here, these I3 books, which we'll talk about more, is that I want to have made a difference. Whether or not these programs last, there will be people who will have heard them and maybe taken in some, and now it's part of who they are. And I hope they do what I like to quote from Stranger in a Strange Land. I hope they grokked what we've been talking about, you and I and all my other guests and so forth. And that's the kind of legacy I want to leave, to where, they say once you've heard something, you can't unhear it. Well,
Right.
that's true. Once you hear what we've talked about, you're going to have to deal with it. Maybe not
Right.
today, maybe
Good.
not
Yeah.
tomorrow. And I think that rather than a physical legacy from that standpoint, boy, we're talking more about a spiritual legacy, which I want to talk about as well.
Right. So that's where actually the subtitle of the book
Hmm.
comes in. So there's the other component of unleash the rage of negative emotions, like, because I get frustrated with myself. Like, I want to be different.
Yeah.
Like I talk about that on the bell curve. There's 100 Gregs. So I'm not really worried about being on the bell curve comparing myself to other people.
Hmm.
So in each of my roles as a husband, there's 100 Gregs, and I want to march my way up to that 100 percentile Greg. There is a Greg at the 100 percentile who is the best husband he can be, as a therapist, as a father, now a grandfather, right? That's one. That's so I want to become more. But secondly, is when I talk about my four components, it's of leadership, of IQ and critical thinking, personality and emotional intelligence, but spiritual development and destiny. The legacy has to do with this. So what I've had, I can't tell you how many times I've had people sign up for counseling with me because they might be even super successful. I talk about having two doctors who they're from Houston actually, and they didn't know each other, but I worked with them at the same time. One was a radiologist, one was the anesthesiologist, and they both came to me and they were successful. They were making like 300K plus a year, but they said there's still something missing. And I have countless people come to me in their mid 30s, early 40s saying, is this it? And it has to do with their mission statement, what I call the Iron Man core. And it has to do with on the legacy side of a mission and purpose. In my books, I talk about macro emotional goals, fulfilling destiny, calling, and purpose. That it's I said every job ever, every technological advancement ever is either trying to solve a human problem or enhance the human experience. Every job ever. So, in the process of when we look at the human experience and helping people develop their mission statement, I asked them the question, what is it about the human experience that drives you absolutely crazy? Like there's a million problems in the world, right? But what it's this one that just I can't stand, whether it be like it could be poverty, sex trafficking, it could be frankly, mine is mediocrity. I can't stand mediocrity, right? So and it always comes from the mission statement that always comes from your own personal experiences. Every mission statement I helped develop in somebody came from their own personal experience. They either experienced it themselves or they observed it and it just created this holy fire, that spiritual, this holy fire inside of them that said that is what I must go. And may or may not turn into your actual job or career,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to do something or else you will go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. You have to do something to go after that problem. That's legacy.
Yeah.
That is legacy.
Yeah. Greg Stewart's my guest here on the program. I'm Reverend Dr. D. This is Tell Me Your Story. Now, Greg Stewart, you mentioned something mediocrity, and first of all, I'm not going to be like the students in Einstein's class who criticized him for getting one answer wrong, but he got 9 answers correct on a math quiz he was putting up on the board. I love that example. So what I'm going to say is that 99% of the time, Amazon does deliver. They deliver a good quality product for me that I've ordered and so forth. Everything is fine. But then, and I'm going to use an example, a real example. I ordered this powdered drink, powder for drink, hot cocoa mix. Okay, we're into winter, like to have that around. It's a wonderful thing, and I've ordered it from them before, and it comes perfectly intact. Everything's fine, all's good. So I give them credit for that. Okay, but then there's that 1%, and I just ordered another packet, and it arrived the other day. And I opened the box and I removed the packing paper, and the package that normally comes intact was inside another plastic bag that was coated on the interior with the powder that was inside the bag of the product.
Yep. Yep.
So I opened the bag and I'm getting this fine cocoa powder all over the place, right? And I'm trying to be careful and everything. So I get online. I was going to call them, but I couldn't find a number, and I'm sure there is one. But I did a text or a chat, I guess I should say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they wanted me to return it. I said, there ain't no way. It's garbage. I threw it out. Okay, we'll give you a refund. So they gave me a refund. All right, that's acceptable. But I shouldn't have to do that. Because
Right.
I sit here going, who packed this in fulfillment? And they actually, all right, I give them credit. They thought well enough to put the bag that has holes in it into another bag to keep the powder from going everywhere. But why? Why would you even bother? Take that, put it in the bin that's going to be sent back to the manufacturer, get me a bag that has no holes in it and ship that. And that goes to your example of mediocrity. And
Yeah. And I saw it on a social media post one time, and that's why I found it and I did a clip of it.
Mhm.
And it was of this like philosopher. It looked like I think it was Leonardo da Vinci, but they just put mediocrities, the philosopher mediocrities, and underneath it was in quotes, good enough.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what it is. It's like, good enough.
Oh, but 10 years or 20 years ago, when I went to work for a TV station in Santa Barbara, the phrase was, what was the phrase? It's all good. It's all
Yeah.
good. I'm going,
Right.
no, it's not.
Right.
If I don't understand why. Now, I will not sit here and say that everything I've ever put out has been top notch, 100% and so forth. All right. I've done my best to maintain high quality standards as far as the quality of the audio and so forth. And I have actually stopped recordings, whether it's in studio or just mics as opposed to on Zoom or what have you, and said, hold on, we got to can you log out and log back in? Or, hey, I need to reset my computer, reboot, sit still, and we'll start again because this is not sounding right. And so forth. So, But fortunately, I would say maybe 98, 99% of the time, it's good quality that we're putting out and so forth. And every once in a while, and then there are times that you have a chain, okay, and what you do, and then you pass down the chain is just fine. It's perfect. It's excellent, right? But then it gets to somebody else who then adds a part to it, like in an assembly line. I mean, you're dependent on so many different people, and that's why I want to have as few chains in, as few links in the chain as possible. It's
Right.
fascinating. I want to talk about this aspect of, first of all, because you used the phrase spiritual development to becoming more. Okay, what is a process that you use to develop your spiritual foundation so that then you can focus on that aspect of becoming more.
Right. So let me illustrate this way. So it's spiritual development and destiny. Now, the spiritual destiny would be the mission statement thing I mentioned a minute ago.
Mm-hmm.
But spiritual development, I was working. I had this. I worked with this young boy. He's probably 10 or 11, and his parents had brought him in, and they just moved here from Oregon to Texas. And but then what they did was he and a bunch of friends did the ding dong ditch thing, and it
Oh,
got to the point where they actually one of the boys kicked the door and broke the door. So I did a session with him to like walk him through, what he did and all that. So I basically summarized it and said, listen, when it comes to like this morality and having values and integrity, when to achieve, like as I talk about emotional goals, everything we do is trying to achieve an emotional goal, right? I want to feel something. So when you want to feel something good and the pathway you take, the choice you make, the behavior you do to feel good results in decreasing the emotional experience of somebody else, that's selfishness.
mm-hmm.
So, how about we take that one example that when it comes to spiritual development, when I, out of my own selfishness, take an action or behavior or choice to increase my emotional experience, which then decreases the emotional experience of others. So, it's basically I win, they lose.
Mm-hmm.
That's selfishness. How about we flip that? Like true servant leadership is when I lose and they win. Now, the goal is like a, good old Stephen Covey win-win.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to actual having to make a choice where based upon a value set. Now, I'm not talking about accountability either. Like if I have to hold somebody accountable, but so when I hold someone accountable, it's like I don't gain an emotional good experience from someone being held accountable or getting written up or let go, right? It definitely decreases their emotional experience, but that's on them. It's not on me. I'm talking about out of achieving the emotional goal of I want to experience dopamine or good emotions at the
Mm-hmm.
expense of others, right? So in a sense, I would say that's spiritual development at its core of I'm going to hold to values that even though my emotions may suffer in the process. I think that's the key. That my emotional experience is not the goal. It's not the end state
Mm-hmm.
where I make behaviors that basically decrease the value set or the emotional experience of other people.
Mm. Greg Stewart's my guest here on the program. His latest work having to do with I3. We'll talk about I3, which is for leaders. Information, these are the I's: information, interpretation, and intensity. And it's unleashing the rage of negative emotions against the obstacles of becoming more. As we continue here with yours truly, Reverend Dr. D, here on Tell Me Your Story. Greg Stewart, my guest here on the program, one of the things that I would like for you to, how do I put this? Do I want you to evaluate it? I want your observation on this, okay? Because this has sort of been my philosophy, and I've been challenged by other guests on this philosophy, which I'm glad for. I really am, because I'm willing to burn all those straw houses down and start over if that's what it takes. And that is this philosophy: when I'm working with someone, let's say you're a client of mine and I'm producing something for you. My goal is not for me to be successful. My goal is for you to be successful with what I produce for you. In turn, I become successful. Now, someone said, well, no, really, you should rephrase that by saying, I want you to be successful and I want myself, I want to be successful. And I understand the little semantical twist that this person shared,
Right. Yep.
but my boss here in Santa Barbara instilled in me, and he's my latest boss. I've been working with him now for like 20 years, 18 to 20 years. His philosophy from the beginning when he hired me was, we are here to serve. Okay. You don't get into arguments over blah, 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 blah. You're here to serve. You say either, yes, we can do this, or not no, but let me see what I can do. Let me see what I can do. So what do you think about that? I want to make you successful, not me, because when you're successful, then I'm successful.
Right. So, and I get questions like this as far as, in the pursuit of trying to become more influential, dot, dot, dot. And then they bring up as far as, what traits as far as do you do to do that? I say, well, right there, it's my goal is I don't think about trying to become more influential. You don't start off with or successful. When you said, I don't start off trying to become more successful. Success and influence is a lag indicator. It's a byproduct of the lead indicator. And the lead indicator is me overcoming my own weaknesses, right? That's that if everyone, a leader overcomes obstacles, again, starting internally, emotional intelligence, discipline, and like overcomes obstacles everybody else wishes they could overcome. That's what makes them leaders. I don't go into anything trying to gain influence, gain success. If I do what's right, rational, healthy, wise, and right, and effective when it comes to leadership, the natural byproduct will be that. So it's semantics, you're right, but it's powerful in the sense that I don't worry about my own success or my own influence. I do what I know to be right and good and rational, healthy, wise, right, and effective. And a natural byproduct of that will be influence and success. So that's where I'm going to make you successful. And I have to worry about, because if I make you successful, a natural byproduct, a lag indicator to that will be my own success. But I don't go into it, into this relationship focused on my own success.
Exactly. I know one of the other phrases that I use on a regular basis is that words have power, and that when we are saying whatever it is that we're saying, the words that we choose are important, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we can talk semantics, but even in that context, that's one of the reasons why I love that phrase, from a stranger in a strange land to grok. And I interpret that or define that as assimilating into every subatomic particle of my being, whatever that philosophy, whatever those words are. And I remember years ago when I was younger and I was more idealistic, I would watch, especially in politics, but also in a religion and and the economists and so forth. They would say certain things and this and that and the other, and especially in politics. And I would sort of look at that and go, well, wait a minute. And someone would say, well, but Richard, you're being so naive. It's just politics. They don't mean what they're saying. And I'm going, well, then why are they saying it?
Right.
And obviously there's an intent there, and the intent is to be elected to whatever that office is. So they will say whatever it takes. There was a governor in Arizona back in the 70s, I believe it was. I think it was early 80s. He was also the first governor to be impeached in Arizona. And in the primaries, he went after his Republican opponent, bringing up something that had already been resolved in the courts. But he brought it up anyway. And of course, he went on to win the primary and then, of course, the governorship. And I challenged that whole thing. I said, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. That's not the truth. Okay, yeah, the events that he's talking about happened, but it was resolved. It's over. So I want to go into this aspect of one of our leaders over the years, many, many years ago when I was still in single digits, who unfortunately was assassinated, but he used this phrase. I'd like you to tie this into what we're talking about here, as I3 and for leaders, to be judged not by the color of our skin, but by the content of our character. And I would also include not by necessarily what we do. And what I mean by that is, for example, my job. Okay, my job description. That isn't who I really am. It's how I carry myself, how I behave. What is it? There's another one too that says something along the lines of, I can learn more about you by playing a game for 1 hour than being with you for like a month.
Right. Right. So,
Talk to him.
and yeah, that's interesting. So imagine like we stepped way back and if like for instance on my IQ, the information interpretation intensity, the first I liken it onto the Panama Canal,
Hmm.
and it's the first lock has to fill up before the second lock opens. So on information, and I'll make this full circle
Hmm.
that it is illegal. I use that word illegal. It's illegal for me to have any interpretation, any opinion, or any emotion until I have all the information.
Mm.
So I said, imagine if everybody in our current society and culture held themselves to that one ethic. I cannot have an opinion or any emotion until I have all the information. I'm not just going to basically, it's called confirmation bias. I'm not just going to, right? So that's a character issue. And along with that is if everyone did that, imagine how different the world would be. Same thing with the content of your character. If everybody in the world focused on just the content of their character, how different of a world would it be? Again, it's almost like we don't need to worry about people's skill sets, their positions, how they are at a job, because skill sets are skill sets. I have certain skills, and I certainly do not have other skills. I will never be a professional golfer, even though I'd love to be a professional golfer, right?
Hmm.
So, but if the content of my character is solid, then my skill sets, my success, my influence, all those other things will take care of themselves. So it's almost like it's a prerequisite that if we took care of this one prerequisite first, the content of your character, nothing else matters because the color of someone's skins is irrelevant. It's their character because there are people of like 100 people who have the same color skin, but some people have excellent skill sets while others don't.
Hmm.
Some people have great character while others don't. What color of our skin has nothing to do with the content of our character. So
Yeah.
that is the prerequisite to everything. So why don't we focus on what we do have control over, the content of our character, and everything else will be kind of fall in place. That's right. Spiritually, the seek first that, and all
Hmm.
these things will be added to you unto you as well. Seek first,
Kingdom
that
of God. Yes.
right, kingdom and his righteousness, right?
Hmm.
So we focus on character and righteousness and discernment. I'm actually memorizing passages like if we search, and it's actually in my books where wisdom calls out, it raises its voice, and if you seek wisdom, right? If you cry out for discernment, if you lift up your voice for understanding, if you seek it as if it were silver, if you search it out as if it were hidden treasure, then you'll get it. Then you'll understand wisdom.
Yeah.
Then you'll understand, like, it's actually, then you'll understand the fear of the Lord. But wisdom and discernment, like as far as teachability, this is character. People can say, yes, I know I could be wrong. Then they say, you know what? No, I can be wrong. And I'm going to assume I am wrong because um, I'm going to assume that Richard has information I don't have. And the way he thinks is better than the way I think. Then there's people who are in the intensity is I have to eradicate my blind area.
Mm.
I am just in this all out pursuit. I cry out for discernment. It's an intensity issue. So even on teachability, the content of character being teachable. And I like the words humble, I like the word vulnerable, but there's so much other emotional baggage. I just like the word teachable.
Hmm.
Just be teachable. It takes the emotionality out of it and focus on being teachable and proactively teachable to the degree, not just being open to it, that's reactive teachability, but having this insane passion for eradicating your blind areas, this insane passion of, I don't understand, I don't have wisdom, but I want discernment, I want understanding. That's the basis of someone's content of the character. That's where it begins.
I like I cubed. That's kind of cool. And you've got several books out, and we're going to talk about those. I want you to talk about the series that you've got out there as we continue here with Greg Stewart here on Tell Me Your Story. Our guest on the program, Greg Stewart, has a library that he's published, that he's written of books, I cubed, as I like to call it, I3. And in this case, we're talking about for leaders. I want to ask you about the library of books that you've written.
Yeah. The
I
trilogy. Mhm.
the trilogy. All right. It's fascinating to me because you and many other folks that I've had on this program are really working hard to try to inspire and educate people to become more. So
Yeah.
talk to us about more of the books that you have in this trilogy.
Right. Right. So I have a background. I mean, I have multiple, it's kind of all in the people helping business. I was a pastor for 15 years. I was an adjunct professor. I've been a counselor for almost 30 years. So in this process and a coach and consultant, so, becoming more coaching or counseling, coaching, consulting. So my first book on I cubed, information, interpretation, intensity, it is unlock the inner strength behind your negative emotions. And the negative emotions have to do with just our own personal struggle. And like I have negative emotions, but it has to deeper level of resulting from insecurities, resulting from my own identity, value, and worth, or previous trauma. So that's the first book where it is a deep dive into my own heart and soul and my own insecurities because of hurt and pain. The second book is on IQ for couples because half my caseload is working with couples, but just the practicality of marriage and relationships. But I refer back to my first book because a lot of times our marriages go south because of our own first book, insecurities and such, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, like in life itself, our end goal is to like raise our children and impact our children to become powerful leaders in society. And we want to be as successful as we possibly can. And a driving force behind all the three books was, speaking of legacy, is we had our first grandson this year. And I wrote these books because I want his grandpa's brain in paper. So long after I'm gone, my grandchildren, my great grandchildren, and so on can read like legacy, read the mindset of their grandpa, great grandma, and the such. Because I want to influence, I want to leave a legacy of helping people, not just currently in my caseload of, I see about 40 clients a week, but also my children, my grandchildren, my great grandchildren. And that's my legacy of helping them become more,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I say, thanks to here, kids, here's the secret, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's all three books where, the IQ for couples, and then IQ for leaders.
It reminds me of the phrase that I use on this program in regards to um, looking for those. I'm sorry, with the new paradigms for a new world and giving people choices and knowledge of their choices to help make their dreams come true, and making this world. And here's the catch: a better place for everyone. But everyone has a different definition of what better is. And in this case, with what we're talking about with you, Greg, having to do with for leaders, the information, the interpretation, and the intensity, having to do with becoming more. Everybody has a different definition of what that means, or
Hmm.
what they want to become more. And one of my guests, Dennis Henson, who we've been doing some series. We did 53 programs last year, one a week on his book. And one of the things that he talked about was reading something inspirational every day. That was his core. That was the number one thing. But then following that was having a goal. And that, for example, he teaches real estate. So he brought in a map. It could have been of the United States, could have been of Texas, which is where he lives. And he laid it out on the table and he turned to his students. And the first thing out of his mouth was, the question out of his mouth was to his students after he laid out the map was, where do you want to go? And they looked at him going, huh? What do you mean? Where do you want to go? And he says, the point of me laying this map out is this map has absolutely no value whatsoever unless you know where you want to go. So we have to find we have to create a goal. We have to come up with a goal. We have to find our life's purpose, that kind of thing. This ties into the whole aspect of becoming more. More what?
Yeah.
How do you teach people to find that?
Right. So the more like as far as where we want to go, that's where bring in the emotional goals. The emotional goal is the micro, which when you and I are dialoguing, not only like I want the micro goal, I don't want to feel thirsty, I don't want to feel hungry, but I also have the micro goal of feeling like I'm contributing, and that when we end this discussion, my micro goal is I want to feel that it was worth your time. That's a
Mhm.
micro emotional goal. But then there's the macro emotional goals are always in a periphery, which is it's increasing our standard of living. It's our quality of life. Basically, it's our quality of life, increasing our standard of living, which whatever however you define that, it's up to you. But then there's living our values and fulfilling destiny, calling, and purpose. So
Mhm.
where do we want to go? The emotional goals like are easy and they're good and agree upon. It's the pathway we take. If I want to get to legacy, what's my pathway to get to legacy?
Mm.
But when I use that word, sure, countless people want to have the feeling that they leave a legacy. Countless people want to have the feeling that they are contributing. They want to feel like they left the world a better place.
Mhm.
That's the feeling, but then we all get to choose the road we take, the pathway to get there. So where do you want to go? Yes. People need to know like because the pathway I choose will either get me there or not get me there. Or it'd be like almost like, yeah, it'd be a nice, I would sure I'd love to get there, but then all the pathways I take don't get me there. So it's just conceptual, but it takes decision and intention and planning to get to these emotional goals of living our values and leaving a legacy. People conceptually think about it, but are you choosing the paths in order to get there?
Yeah. I love one of my guests, a rabbi, wrote a book called, if I remember the title correctly, something along the lines of "What will they say about you when you're gone?" Having to
Mhm.
do with that aspect. We talked earlier about it leaving a legacy, and it's like there have been people in our lifetimes, yours and mine, who have left a legacy. But unfortunately, it isn't really the legacy either you or I would like to leave,
Yep,
because it was sort of a pathway of destruction that they left.
for
And
sure.
and yet, what that pathway of destruction ends up bringing up is this concept of victimhood. Now, again, I'm not taking away anybody's sense of outrage over something, an injustice that's been done to them, but victimhood doesn't really serve anybody, because if I'm a victim, it's somebody else's fault. Well, then I'm a puppet on a string being manipulated by forces I don't understand. I'm not in control. I'm not responsible for my life. What about that aspect of, especially within leadership, of stepping away? I thought back in the 80s when I went through these personal growth programs, I won the game of victimhood because I don't play it anymore. I'm not a victim. I'm 100% responsible for who I am, where I am, and how I live my life. And I try to impart that to other people. Talk to us about the opposite of that whole
Right.
victimhood aspect.
Well, so by definition, people experience trauma. Whether it be I call it big T trauma or little T. Big T is a diagnosable threat of loss of life or limb,
Hmm.
but then there's little T trauma, which is very difficult experiences that I didn't have control over. So we've all been victims. That's different from victimhood
Hmm.
because what's the difference? It's the response to the victim being a victim in that experience. So victimhood is what I lost now defines me.
Hmm.
So I like asking the question, has anybody ever been through worse than I have
Yeah.
or have had it harder and yet they came out successful and stronger because of it? Well, the answer is yes. Like I always compare everybody, including Greg Stewart, to Viktor Frankl. He was in the Holocaust, right? And he came out and he said the one thing, the only power my captors do not have over me is my power of response. Was he a victim? Yeah, there's not a human being on earth today that they're obviously as far as the Holocaust. Now, when he left, that's when he wrote Man's Search for Meaning. Like, how do I get meaning out of my very legitimate and real victim experience to where I don't have victimhood?
Hmm. Yeah.
right? So I'm going to take back the power. And what do people like who heal? So people who heal say what? I am stronger now than I've ever been. I wouldn't wish that upon anybody, but I'm stronger now than I've ever been. People who don't heal, people who are woe is me for I'm wounded, wounded turns into bitterness. So it's wounded, bitter, entitled. The world owes me something. Wounded and bitter and self-righteous, everybody else is wrong, and then wounded, bitter, and then addicted, right? So
Yeah.
those are only three paths to it versus the people who say, I'm stronger now than I've ever been. I wouldn't wish that upon anybody. Of course, that's true. You were a victim, but I'm stronger now than I've ever been.
Yeah.
There's the difference.
Dr. Greg Stewart is our guest here on the program. We're talking about his latest work, I3, which is for leaders, information, interpretation, and integrity. And we will continue here on Tell Me Your Story. It's unfortunate that we only have so much time because we both have something going on at the top of the hour. But I want to ask a little bit about you. My question is, Greg, Dr. Greg Stewart, what are you a doctor of? I have a pain in my
Right.
shoulder.
Right now, I have a PhD in counseling, basically. Yeah, I have a PhD in counseling, and I did my dissertation on the relationship of emotional intelligence with job satisfaction and organizational commitment. So I got my PhD in counseling, but my dissertation was more on the organizational leadership side, emotional intelligence, job satisfaction, organizational commitment. And then, so that's how it kind of played in together. But I have a master of divinity. That's the MDiv,
Mm-hmm.
MDiv is this. That's the whole Greek Hebrew theology stuff. But a bachelor's in organization leadership, a master of divinity, a master's in counseling, and a PhD in counseling.
I just want to touch on this real quick, and then we're going to wrap things up. And that is this: we talked just a little bit ago about victimhood and being a victim. And one of the things that I loved, someone brought up these passages from the New Testament where it says, uh, "Love your enemies, and then pray for those who persecute you." And then after that, they said, "Here's an interesting twist: Do you have any enemies?" Well, from my perspective, I have no enemies. So I don't have to pray for my enemies. And I don't have anybody that's persecuting me. I had a situation back in June where I got a phone call. I was just read the riot act. I hung up because I said, no, that's not mine. And then I got a bunch of emails with the same stuff. Again, shared that with my wife. She was in tears. Oh, I'm sorry they hurt you. I said, they didn't hurt me because what they said isn't mine. It's theirs. They're having a bad day, etc., etc. So if you don't have any enemies, hey, that's terrific. And it's us who choose the enemies. It's us, in my opinion, who choose our persecutors. It's like, and I look at it this way: if you're standing on the railroad tracks and a train is coming, that's on you. You put yourself in front of that train. All right. It doesn't mean that you have to give up your values, morals, and what we've talked about it earlier in the program. What are your thoughts in
Yeah.
that regard?
Yep. Well, let's say like an enemy, it's a strong term, but if
Yeah.
there's somebody in your life that there's conflict
Mm-hmm.
and the negative emotion produced from that conflict, and that person is in some way, shape, or form hurting you.
Mm-hmm.
It could be other than somebody at work that they are critical of you, they gossip about you, right? By definition, but because they're causing you pain in a variety of different ways. I mean, there's obviously an enemy of somebody who is, being kidnapped or physically abused, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But the point is that you don't focus on that because you're giving power to that. You take back the power.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Viktor Frankl says, the only power this person does not have
Yeah.
is the power of my response. There's a passage like, love your enemies, pray. My favorite one is in Romans 12, where it says, if your enemy is hungry, give them something to eat. If they're thirsty, give them something to drink. Why? In so doing, you will heap burning coals on their head.
Yes. Yes.
Right? But you take the high road and you put yourself above them. That I am not going to give you the power of my emotional state and my peace. You do not have the power over my peace.
Hmm.
You do have power over my current experience, which could be terrible,
Sure.
again, whether it be physical or emotional, but you do not have power over my peace. So out of that peace, I'm able to show you kindness.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where it's at.
I love that. And the three I's, one of those really epitomizes this, is that's interpretation. Dr. Greg Stewart, I want to thank you so much for joining us here on the program. If I may ask you these three final questions, I asked you before, but I'm going to ask you again because the answers sometimes change. But I
Yeah.
want to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, folks. Those three questions we're going to jump right into are: who is Greg Stewart?
Greg Stewart is first and foremost a servant of the King Jesus.
What gets you up in the morning?
Um, the vision and passion for changing the world by helping people overcome negative emotions.
And what was your best day?
Uh, Most recently when my grandson was born.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. I will also say one final thing to you. I normally people say, "Hey, you're doing great. Please don't change." And I'm going to revise that. Say, "No, I want you to change
Change.
because it's
Yeah.
all about becoming more." That's part of the
Okay.
process.
Yeah. Yes,
Thank you,
sir.
Greg. I appreciate it.
Thank you. My
And
pleasure, brother.
and thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. Pardon me. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love Talal. Jeanette, I'm still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. Mike, thanks for being in my life and letting me be in yours. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.